Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again tonight. My name is Anna Withers, and I work with Springfield Community Gardens. If you're not familiar with the Gardens, we are a nonprofit based out of Springfield, Missouri, and we have a vision of a community where everyone has access to healthy local food. And we realize that in a lot of different ways. We're trying to address a broken food system from many different parts. So we've got community gardens run by volunteers. We have got 3 urban farms that are staffed by actual SCG employees, many of whom are beginning farmers themselves. We've got a commercial test kitchen that we make available for producers and people trying to add value-added products to their farm or using locally sourced products. And then we have a real sweet food forest in the middle of town. It's in a very unsuspecting city plot, and there's so much stuff growing back there. If anyone is ever in or around Springfield, just drop us a line, and we're happy to give tours of our spaces and continue using them as educational sites, because part of the big why we exist is to educate more growers in our community on regenerative agriculture and ways that we can grow food so that everyone has food to eat while we're protecting the planet. If you would like to know more about what Springfield Community Gardens does, this is our website, and it's really easy to reach out to us, very easy to sign up to volunteer, and we love meeting more community members. So definitely check back to our events page, because we have in-person workshops as well as webinars like these that are happening monthly. So keep your eye on us. And this webinar tonight is focused on expanding sales to institutions, and we're going to be focusing on scaling up and thinking about those new buyers that are emerging in the food system. There are a lot of scaling and production logistics that have to be taken into account. We are going to be talking about forming relationships with buyers, which takes time and effort and planning. And a lot of the time, farmers are very busy on the production side. So how are you going to carve out time to be reaching these new markets? But hopefully we can give you some good ideas and make this idea seem a little bit more approachable if it's something that you would like to pursue. We have an awesome panel. I'm very excited. We're welcoming back Patrick Byers. He's our MU Extension and horticultural field specialist and a food safety expert. We also have Jennifer Hashley, who's the director of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project in Boston. And we're also going to be joined for a short while with Anthony Mirisciotta, who is the executive director of the Spring Creek Food Hub, and then Thomas Smith, who's the director of operations at the Kansas City Food Hub. So we'll get to hear from people all throughout the Heartland region who are really making this stuff happen. So I first want to kind of hand it off to our panelists and let them introduce themselves so that we can hear a little bit more about them. But real quick, before we do that, I should mention we really appreciate audience engagement, and we love answering questions in real time. So don't hesitate to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask those questions, and then leave the chat clear for actual just comments. And I'm going to be putting a lot of links based on what we're talking about into the chat as we go along. And then as we exit the workshop, a screen will pop up with a link to a post-workshop survey. And that survey is used in our reporting to the USDA. It also helps us provide meaningful workshops in the future. So if you can take 2 quick minutes and fill out that survey, we really appreciate it. This particular workshop is funded through the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, and they have an LFPP program, which stands for Local Food Promotion Projects. And that's been a wonderful source of funding. It's all about promoting local food and making it easier for consumers like you or me to buy all of the local food being grown here. So I'm going to stop sharing, and how about we start with a quick hello from Patrick.
Thank you, Anna. I am thrilled to be here tonight. As Anna mentioned earlier on, I'm with University of Missouri Extension, and I've had the pleasure of a 33 plus year career serving farmers, helping to farmers to develop profitable enterprises in the short term and sustainable enterprises in the long term. I'm also a produce food safety specialist and have worked in that arena since 2009.
Nice. Anthony?
Thanks, Anna. I'm happy to be here as well. And as you said, I am the executive director of Spring Creek Food Hub. We are located in Northwest Arkansas and Springdale, Arkansas, not very far from Missouri and Oklahoma. And we're a new food hub, so really just got our start in May of 23. And we focus on really creating successful and sustainable, financially viable farming models, and really focus on providing technical assistance, wholesale readiness training, and any other additional support that we can. And a big pillar that comes out of that is really supporting community food access. As we work to increase supply and support farmers, we have this great ability to increase the supply of local, fresh, healthy food. So super excited to be here tonight. And I also serve on the USDA Fruit and Vegetable Advisory Committee, and have been working in a very similar space nationally for a number of years now, and most recently moved to Arkansas from South Carolina, where I was managing a nonprofit food hub there for the past 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas?
Well, I'm a little bit newer to the game than Anthony, so I'm sure he'll be able to give a lot more the experience and the history of everything about food hubs and selling to institutions. But I'm Thomas Smith. I've been with the Kansas City Food Hub, which is a food hub up in KC. We're walking distance from the border of Kansas, but right now we're in Missouri. We do business in both states, primarily within about a 200-mile radius, with our farms being located 125-mile radius of our warehouse location. We have been in operation since 2016. Scott started in 2015, though. And yeah, we are a cooperative association of farmers who have come together to try to make an increased wholesale market for, local produce from small to mid-range farmers of all different types and varieties of farm. We have hydroponic farms, and then we all the real organic farms, and we have the Amish farmers in our co-op, and we're one big tent of farmers who are just coming together to build that market demand and supply that market demand, utilizing a few staff members. We're about 5 strong right now. So 4 of those are part-time. I'm the only full-time member of the staff right now. And yeah, we have been really chugging along, trying to increase our sales, and we're basically doing doubling for the last 3 years in annual sales. And so we've really been developing that market and finding success for our farmers.
Wow, that's incredible. And give yourself some credit. It sounds like food hubs are kind of new to everyone. Jennifer, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Hashley. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. We're based in the Boston area of Massachusetts, north of the city. And we are a farmer training program at heart, but have been running a food hub since 2005. Market channels. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So real quick, I'm going to try in my best, give my best effort to describe a food hub in layman's terms, because it's a new concept. People have been, well, it's not exactly a new concept, but it's becoming more mainstream. The USDA is helping fund a lot of these projects. So for those in the audience, a food hub matters because it is trying to be an entity in the middle of farmers and those maybe larger institutional buyers. So it takes a lot of time and effort for, let's say, the food buyer of a hospital to, imagine a food buyer of a hospital meeting with 20 different farmers trying to see what they have on a week-to-week basis. Those are very tough logistics when that buyer could instead just be in a big ordering system with Aramark or Cisco, and say, hey, this week I need 500 pounds of tomatoes and 600 pounds of cucumbers. And, they've made it really easy for people to order produce on a week by week or however frequent basis. So instead of buyers and farmers spending all their time trying to coordinate, and, smaller scale producers don't always have that consistent volume that these larger buyers are seeking, a food hub can kind of meet them in the middle. And the food hub can take on a lot of those logistics and buy, cucumbers and tomatoes from 10 different farmers. And that way their stock of produce is a lot more, and they have the supply ready for larger buyers. And it's just more of a streamlined way for the farmers to be working with like one buyer, one entity, and have that flow of communication, and build that relationship. And it's supposed to make things a little bit more efficient. That's my best try at a layman's explanation. And I know I've missed a lot of big marks, but I wanted that to kind of be the starting point for where we are and just setting the context for what is a food hub and how different are they. Like Anthony, you already touched base on the fact that a food hub could be for profit or nonprofit. And I'm curious, like, what are some of the implications for that? Or can you speak to maybe some of the different ways that a food hub could function?
Yeah, sure. I can try. As long as I've been working in this space, my definition continues to change with time. But I think you did a pretty good job, Anna. But they they absolutely look entirely different. It not only can they be nonprofit or for profit, they could be a public benefit corporation, it could be a B Corp, it could be a co-op, as where Thomas's is also a pretty unique model. So as far as kind of governance and legal structure, there's definitely many different ways that it could look. And what I always say is, kind of how things really shape what shapes the direction of a food hub is really a really good food hub is just going to be a product, the best product of its environment. So taking the time to understand not only the needs of the farmers within the community that you're in, but also the consumers and the markets and the institutions, understanding and identifying the needs of everybody and really reacting to fill that space. That's going to allow the food hub to be the best possible organization that it can, but also allow it to really be the most successful that it can be in the space. And it's absolutely different, especially me speaking from firsthand experience and understanding, coming, just about a year and a half ago from a really well-established, successful food hub model that was based in Charleston, South Carolina. I can bring a lot of the experience that I had and try to replicate that in Arkansas, but it's like speaking an entirely different language. It's kind of that way all over, and really starts with understanding the needs of the community that you're in, and really taking time to understand that space and kind of build out a model that best fits for your geographic and regional location.
That makes a lot of sense too, because depending on where you are in the US, it's like I'm sure that your farmers and production styles are also going to be very different, I suppose. And it's nice that there's not just one way people have to do it. I suppose it's, the flexibility and options definitely make things easier. Thomas, can you speak to your food hub being using the co-op model?
Yeah. So obviously I think all models really have their own benefits and, pros and cons. I think like not only in governance, like Anthony is more mentioning, and also what he was mentioning of operationally, our food hub's not only different that I'm a co-op and I believe you guys are a nonprofit, correct, Anthony? But also like we do a harvest to order model, and I believe Anthony's using a inventory model, correct? And so there's a lot of differences, and so our cooperative model obviously has the benefits of having more farmer engagement, more farmer ownership. Like I've already stated, I'm the director of operations, the senior staff member, but our board of directors that I report to have monthly meetings, have weekly check-ins with the president of the board, who's Katie Nixon. Those are all farmers, and obviously that has a lot of different pull in the direction that we go in as an organization, and also the different practices that we'll use to meet the needs of the market. And so yeah, but obviously a market system isn't only defined by the producers. And so sometimes there's other, like Anthony was saying, geographic areas and cultural areas, and just areas that have different resources that might have a better mesh of ownership from, ownership and engagement from different groups, not just the producers like the KC Food Hub has.
Sorry, I was muted. Paint me a picture with some numbers. How many producers do you buy from in your food hub, or what are your annual? Did you say that your sales had doubled since last year, or was like what are those sales roughly?
So our sales doubled year over year for the last 3 years. They probably won't make it exactly to that point again. We did, I believe in before 2021, we were doing around 100K in sales every year. And then we doubled to 200K and then 400K last year. And we're pretty on track to meet somewhere between $550 to $650,000 this year. Obviously, when you get to kind of that level, you're needing to increase your supply, needing to increase your operational capacity of, like I mentioned, I think earlier, of hiring new drivers, having more vans, having a bigger warehouse. And so you do, we were doubling and doubling and doubling, but at a certain point you do kind of have to trail off a little bit, just due to finding that natural limit of the resources you currently have. And so, like I was saying, we're hoping to do, we're projected to do about $550,000 to $600,000 in sales. Right now we're sitting at the 350 mark, but it might sound crazy to do 300K in the next few months, but the fall season is actually really where it hits, because there is so much supply from our farmers, as well as the demand from our schools. Whereas in summer, you have a lot of supply, but not too much demand, because our main school client, as this workshop might suggest, our involvement in is institutional buyers, specifically schools. And so those school districts do have summer programs, but they're pretty smaller in budget than general operating for the academic year. And so we're really chugging along. We actually just brought on another school district this past week, and that school district alone every week will order about $5,000 for their secondary schools. And we're projected to do we have a produce PO and then a hamburger patty PO with that school district, and that hamburger patty PO has to be completely paid in full before the end of the calendar year. And so we'll see $55,000 in sales from that alone, by the end of the year. And so I guess I kind of got really specific there, but yeah, so we work a lot with those school clients. We do a lot of business with nonprofits. We do a lot of business with restaurants. We were doing retail sales, but we've fully gotten out of that since July. And so we have that wholesale focus now. And right now we're doing, like I mentioned earlier, we do a harvest to order model. And so basically that sees our website having the availability of each farm posted. And we have 37 active farms who are selling with us. We have about 42 member farms, but some of those are not currently actively selling with us or are, not doing production really whatsoever right now, due to, different things. And so those 37 farms would go onto our website, which is managed by Local Food Marketplace, which is this wonderful software food hubs can use. And basically just a simple CRM software that the farmer can post their availability of what they'll have for the coming week. The clients then go on from Tuesday to Thursday. It looks like any other online ordering site. We actually have really tailored our use of it recently to match more of the Cisco look, giving the food service director of the school the ability to limit the minimum and maximum for each order from the cafe manager, limit what they actually see. So instead of most buyers go onto our site and can see the full availability from all 37 farms, and now we can limit it so that the food service director can choose specific farms or specific categories of items and have it limited to that, which is really industry standard for a lot of other wholesalers and distributors. And then basically, once the clients go through, order what's available, we then send pick tickets to our farmers. The farmers then, sometimes harvest those, lists that weekend or into the Monday, or, grab it from storage. If we're talking about something like cabbage, that's grabbing from storage at this point. And then over the weekend and into Monday, they deliver it to our centralized warehouse.
You're good. I can still hear you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
There you are.
We have it delivered by the farmers themselves to our warehouse, and then we deliver it with our delivery staff to the schools, restaurants, and nonprofits over the course of the week. And so it's kind of pre-ordering, but the benefit of our system is that it's basically zero food waste, because what's brought in over the weekend is what's already pre-ordered for that week of deliveries. And by that Friday, our warehouse is essentially empty. We do inventory a limited amount of selection.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's kind of our ordering system in a nutshell. And we, have a lot of great wholesale clients who can utilize that system. But I think that's a little bit enough for me. If Anthony wants to speak to his way he's doing it.
I just had a
Sure.
quick question for you, Thomas, if you don't mind me jumping in. Since you're doing pick to order, it sounds like you're not repackaging things from the farmers. How do you maintain quality control in that environment? Like, are you just making sure the farmers are trained so that you're getting good quality product in if you're not repackaging it and it's going right back out? Or are you doing any kind of inspection process feedback to the farmers along the way?
We do some randomized inspection, like spot checks. Obviously, we're doing general smell and look tests. But yeah, primarily we're making sure our farmers are fully trained, have already the only way. Obviously, like I was saying, we're a co-op, so you have to be voted in to be a member of our co-op. And one of the factors that play into that decision by our board of accepting them into membership is the verified experience of wholesale success already, making sure that they're already, experienced in those wholesale pack standards and quality control. And so it's a little bit of trusting the farmer and their experience, doing some randomized, spot checks and checks like that. We're not repackaging like you alluded to. And then obviously we reactively can take measures as well, where if there's any type of problem, we can sort it out with the wholesale client.
So you said you're selling to or buying from about 30 farms, and your main buyers are schools, restaurants, nonprofits. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, 37 farms. So
36 farms. Awesome. That is really cool. So then for farmers to participate in your food hub, it sounds like there is a little bit of onboarding training involved.
Yeah.
Well, and they have
Um,
to use the platform, the software
Yeah.
platform.
We provide for a potential new member of our co-op, you'd either reach out to me, reach out to a board member, would then reach out to me. And then we have to make a tour of your farm, myself, and as well as a board member. I guess kind of would be any of our co-op farmers. We, do that kind of inspection of the farm, actual interview with the farmer in person, check that it actually exists and all of that. And then we have, their availability list, their projected availability list, some points of contact we could call up that would give recommendations for their wholesale success. And then we put it through a board vote. That's just a simple majority, so that the farmers can decide if they do want to include that member. And then there is a membership fee for joining, and then an annual fee for being a member.
Gotcha. Okay, so a lot of that is unexpected, but it makes sense in a co-op model. Anthony, how is the Spring Creek Food Hub different? And I'd love, please include the kind of the numbers. I'm very curious the amount of farmers that you're purchasing from also.
Yeah, definitely, Anna. One thing before I get into that, one thing that Thomas mentioned that, I kind of wanted to underscore, and especially with this conversation tonight around institutional sales, he mentioned, what they started doing to really replicate a model that Cisco is providing for ordering. And, I think as much as it's really our job as food hubs to redesign and re-regionalize the food system and support our local farmers. What I have experienced the greatest success with, especially when it comes to institutional sales, is replicating what is working for those buyers. And, not only through ordering systems, as Thomas mentioned, but really when it comes to, providing consistent packaging, consistent specifications, pack size, product quality, things like that, whether it's coming from 5 growers or 1 grower. One of the biggest challenges with local food and working with small farmers is that it's very inconsistent, especially when you're approaching markets that are so used to consistency. They are ordering 50 cases of tomatoes every single day of the year for nearly the same price. So really trying to provide a little bit more of that consistency in a very inconsistent space, especially with institutional buyers and markets, really goes a long way. So whether you're approaching it, as Thomas does through the cooperative model, or, what we really do and what we're doing currently at Spring Creek is much more aimed at kind of new and beginning farmers, especially new and beginning farmers to the wholesale world. Farmers that are coming to us that have been selling and growing for farmers markets only for the past 5, 20, 30 years. And, there's a lot of work that we do in that space to provide, again, that wholesale readiness training and get them up to the place where, it works really good for wholesale buyers and institutional buyers and markets. So again, as I mentioned, we Spring Creek has only been operating in this space since May of 23, so just over a year. But we have experienced great, momentum since we really began. And currently we work with about 65 farmers, all in Arkansas. Most of them are in Northwest Arkansas, and most of them are very small scale market farmer, market gardener models, 2 acres or less. However, we do also work with a few farms that are a little bit larger, 200 acres or 300 acres in production. And, it really kind of takes all of those scales of growers to really make it work and provide support to everybody to be successful, in this space. So again, 65 farmers, kind of all different shapes and sizes. And again, that's kind of what makes it work, what I have seen work best. And we really bring anyone in and have a conversation with anyone. If you have a backyard garden or if you have 100 acres of sweet potatoes, we're going to have a conversation with you and figure out a way to make it work if they're interested in making it work. It also is just kind of a conversation, getting to know one another, building the relationship on the farmer and food hub side of it, and finding what is going to work best for both parties. It's not always this conversation of a farmer calls and says they really want to grow 10 acres of tomatoes and we on the food hub side are going to buy them all. We'll certainly do whatever we can around that target commodity, but it's really kind of developing production plans together, which is what we do at Spring Creek, is at least twice a year really put in the time with every single one of the farmers that we work with and have a relationship with, to use our market knowledge and understanding and build out extensive production plans with them, so that we're much better informed going into the next season or next year. So from, those 60 growers in the first year that we've been doing this, we now have about 150 market outlets, and we're selling to 6 different school districts. Again, all of those school districts are in Northwest Arkansas. So nonprofit partners, food hub partners, like Thomas, like Springfield Community Gardens, like Oklahoma City Food Hub, like Food on the Move in Tulsa, all partners of ours, and as well as restaurants, retailers, and then kind of a pillar of food access programs that are funded by other sources, federal grants or private philanthropic dollars. And working in that space for a year, we're kind of looking ahead to the end of this year and projecting probably about 700,000 in annual gross sales. Of that
Wow.
700,000, we're really set up and designed to turn 80% of that back to the farmers that we work with.
Okay, that's a great thing to note also. It's like, how do you try to balance supporting these local farms, but you need things, how do you adjust the price per unit and be fair? I imagine that's been a bit of a struggle. But first, before you talk about that, I have to know, can you share like an example of why you think it works better when you have that mix of small and large farmers? Like why isn't it just easier to replicate buying from the big guys because they always have what you need and it's consistent?
Yeah, so it's again kind of going back to the first thing I said when when I kind of opened up, is I'm certainly not saying that it's like the perfect model, but it works for us. Really, it's the best way for us to again provide more of that consistency. Working with some of the larger growers, we're able to have more consistent product availability to offer to the institutional markets, to the larger buyers, and then we're able to support these smaller growers with smaller production by just adding that product on top of what is kind of going out. So it's really this model that kind of supports all the pieces. It allows us to work and support with the larger, more mature growers, and then also continue to offer scalability in a way to grow to those smaller and new beginning farmers that are really trying to first access those wholesale markets.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And thank you also for, still
Yeah.
holding that near and dear to what you guys are trying to accomplish on the big picture. So can you guys talk a little bit about how you're setting prices and trying to make sure you're paying a fair price to farmers who have, had to shoulder the burden of trying to compete for so long?
Anthony, you can go first.
I'm
This
sure
is
it's not easy, and we're all still, working through these issues together. I imagine this is going to, take take a while to really figure out and make work.
Yeah, it's it's definitely, I laugh when you ask that question, Anna, because with me coming into Spring Creek with the experience I have a great team that is working with us now. We're a team of 7 full-time employees, but they don't really have the same kind of produce or food hub experience. So we always talk about pricing, and if a grower calls us and says they have 10 pounds of okra or 20 pounds of tomatoes, whatever it is, a lot of times like these, I hear 10 pounds of okra and I just know in my head what the price should be. So a lot of times just pulling these things out and, feeding them to the team or starting a conversation around it. And I think that, the most important tool that a food hub really has after they kind of build the years of sales experience is kind of that historical data that they can go back onto and, look up last year, what were the pricing trends, or 2 years ago. And it really informs the moment and also the production conversations. We at Spring Creek, other than what I have in my head, we don't really have that historical data to go back onto. So a lot of, every single thing that we have done over the past year is, that grower calls and says they have 10 pounds of okra, and I, on the phone or in the field, I might say, oh, we could pay $2.50 a pound for that, or $3 a pound. What are you thinking you need? And they might say, I need $4 a pound, or at the market, I sell it for $6 a pound. And then it's really just kind of turned into this back and forth dialogue until we come to a place that works. And again, it's just like for us, not everything is always going to work, but it's really just kind of being open and transparent and finding the things that do work and continuing to expand and develop those items that do work. So, that I don't really have a golden answer in regard to like pricing, but that's kind of just how it works. Is I do have numbers and thoughts in my mind, and the farmer also has numbers and thoughts in their mind, and just kind of coming together and being very open and transparent. A lot of times in those conversations, if a grower tells me they have okra, I'm going to come out and tell them that, I'll buy it from you for $2.50 a pound, and I'm going to try to sell it for $3 a pound. So like that's where we are. That I mean, I'm not really able to pay you more, or maybe I could pay you a little bit more, and I can just see what the market could absorb. And we come back to the table a week from now, and maybe it worked, maybe that price increase worked, or maybe it didn't, and we kind of start back where we were. Until you really kind of build that historical data, I think that's the best place to start.
And so we heard with the KC Food Hub how farmers go about entering that. They would contact the food hub, and then they set up a farm visit, and then they have some onboarding procedures. But what about Spring Creek? How do you onboard new farmers?
So onboarding new farmers, it because again, it's our first year of working in this space, so it has been very active. The 65 farmers that we have at this point, the number was nothing, back in May. So it again all starts with a phone call and a conversation. If a farmer reaches out via email or a phone conversation, the first thing we do is set up a time to go out and meet them and walk the field and get to know them and build that relationship. Much like Thomas said, there's also kind of a just checking to make sure that, if somebody says they have 5 acres of corn, that they're the actual one growing that corn, to really also increase that kind of thread of single source identification and transparency, which is really important to the work we do. We want to be able to know where the food is coming from, who's growing it, and be able to offer that information out into the markets and community. So that's a big part of it as well. And then also understanding their soil type, understanding their history on the land, what has historically grown well here, what has not grown well, What have they tried in the past? What are they excited to try more of? And in the moment, you know, if they do have a crop that they're harvesting that they're looking for help on, like, you know, we get a phone call and, hey, I have 500 pounds of tomatoes. It'd be great if y'all could take them. We'll do whatever we can to support them with that kind of ask in the moment. But really, you know, these relationships take time, and we're in it more to kind of plan for the next season together or next year together. But again, just kind of meeting them where they are, understanding their needs, their history, their farm, and building a relationship from there.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Because I was also going to ask about, like, some of the ongoing how do you keep building those ongoing relationships? But, if you guys are having to communicate all the time and sharing the challenges and having to work these things out, I mean, that's relationship building as you're going along. And we actually do have a question from the audience about working with those small and large farms and planning for the future, how you do that. Do either of you ever try to help the farmers with crop planning so that they are supplementing each other or coinciding, what the larger farms are doing and the smaller? Is there any sort of attempt at shared crop planning?
Anthony, if you want to go first, because it was more directed at how Spring Creek's doing it, and then I can follow up with how the KC Food Hub's doing it.
Yeah, we definitely do that. A big part of what we do is extensive seasonal production planning with all of the growers within our network that want to participate in that. So that will be down to the variety, down to the seed type, down to the seed source. So with something, if we do have a larger institutional market, that tells us that they need 100 cases of butternut squash for each month in the fall, whatever that is. It's most likely that we would take that production, that opportunity out to a couple of different growers if we couldn't find one to produce that, and have all of those growers kind of synchronize with timing and also select the exact same variety to provide that consistency out to the market. So we could have 3 different growers, 4 different growers producing the same variety of butternut squash to provide that market with. Another area where I have seen a lot of great success with this is in kind of food hub networks and collaborative partners, synchronizing production planning together, like Kansas City and Springdale and Little Rock and Memphis or wherever it is. Even though you're just a couple hours away from each other, each one of these regions has very different seasons and growing conditions and things like that. And it can really strengthen the local food system if you work together to extend the season of local food. So I have, been part of and have some experience kind of working together with other network partners and other food hubs throughout your region to do production planning together on specific crops to provide markets with more of that local product throughout the year.
Yeah, I think KC Food Hub is a little bit more hands-off in its approach. Because we're farmer owned and operated, we act as far more a, I guess hands-off is the best way to say it. I was trying to come up with a better word, but yeah, so we believe that the farmer is more in touch with their farm, and also obviously they have their own, outside clients outside the food hub. We're not really their only source of even wholesale clients. And because of that, we do more crop allocation planning, which we, have in the past done a little later than we should, but we're hoping to do it far more sooner. I've actually already had a few meetings with some of our farmers in the past 2 weeks about what they're expecting for their winter harvest, and then kind of working around that availability. We're not really, I guess, in the position or, you know, we don't really want to do specific crop planning for, you know, cooperatively all of our farmers. It is more like they're planning their own farm, they're seeing their sales. We can, of course, during those allocation meetings, meet with them, talk about their historic numbers, about what they did sell in the past, what we're expecting in the future with our current clientele. But it's more the onus is onto the farmer. And that goes with a lot of our operations, that we're not really doing any technical training. We're not doing, you know, we're not setting the price. The farmer sets their price on our website. All of that is in the belief that the farmer is, you know, the best steward of their land, the best steward of their product, and we're simply, you know, greasing the wheels for it to get to the final destination. And we're not really, you know, organizing any more complex way than that.
I can see pros and cons to all of these models, definitely, and I do not envy you for trying to crop plan at all or negotiate prices at all. And I really appreciate this conversation, and we brought you on here in hopes that providing more context to the challenges and the logistics on the food hub side would just inform producers who might be interested in working with a food hub at some point. And I want to be respectful of your time, so I just have one more final question. I'd love to hear your thoughts before you go. Just what is your best advice to producers who are, might be ready to take the step toward selling to a food hub? Like, either what do you wish people would know before coming to you, or advice for when they do come to you? Thomas, why don't you go ahead? I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah, I think obviously due to our cooperative nature, we're a little bit different. I think the best course of action wherever you are is to research the food hub, research how they're operating, just have a meeting with them and interact with them. They're going to know the best about how their operations are going and the capacity to, have another farmer and have whatever availability that farm has. So just cold call and have a meeting. Food hub people are friendly, and yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I think similar to that, we love to plan ahead. So, it's, again, like I said, we can certainly try to help in the heat of the moment or when harvest is coming off and you need support and help, but take the time to plan ahead, have the conversations, get to know one another, what's going to work best, what isn't going to work. And then, we absolutely love over communicators. So communication is certainly key. Let us know what's going on, stay ahead of things. Again, just no surprises. I had an old board member that always used to say, surprises are for birthday parties, not business. So, over communicate and just plan ahead.
I'm going to steal that. I like that very much. Well, thank you both. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to weigh in. And now people who are interested in food hubs, hopefully, can see your faces and see that you're not scary and, might be a little bit more prepared to approach one of you to be included in your food hub. And it's wonderful what you're doing. Like, congratulations on all the growth and all the risks that you're taking, really sticking your necks out there to support our local food system. So thank you both so very much.
Thank you, Anna, for inviting us and putting this together.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. It was great being
Thank
here.
you for joining us. This was fabulous.
And congratulations on all your year-over-year success as well. To both of you. I think it's incredible what you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. See you.
Yeah, have a good one.
And that's really a perfect lead in to what we wanted to talk about next, which was connecting with buyers and just how important building those relationships are. They just hit all the points that we wanted to cover about communication and staying ahead of things. At the end of the day, these buyers, these people who are, if you are selling to a food hub, or if you're working with a school district and working with those buyers, at the end of the day, they are just people. They have their demands and they have to, uphold their job responsibilities, but they're people, and it goes a long way whenever you can develop that good rapport with them and really spend some time building the relationship.
And one thing I just wanted to add too, that I didn't hear the exact words come out of either of their discussions of what they feel like a food hub is, but it's really, in my view, part of the definition is that it's very values based, right? So you're really trying to find those buyers that appreciate and value like local and regional food systems and the greater economic impact that those systems can have. Because as we talked about last night on the other webinar, it's so much easier for people, and even Thomas and those guys alluded to it. It's like, it's much easier just to use your same old ordering system and just, do the things the same old way. And it's a different ask to have someone, decide to do a different process, a different ordering process, work with a different vendor who's aggregating from all these small scale farmers or other folks in the region. And so there's a value proposition there that needs to be articulated. And so as a farmer looking for those opportunities, being really clear, what is your value proposition? What are you offering that you can't get from a traditional distributor or broker or someone else in the region? And how do you make that case if you want to work with a food hub, or the food hub is looking for those buyers too? So that values alignment as part of that communication process and that storytelling process, I think is really critical to getting into those those market channels.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of the perfect storm right now, because the idea of supporting local agriculture is, it's certainly, as you said, it's a values commitment, but it also makes good market sense from the standpoint of what consumers in general are interested in. And more supermarkets that historically would not have had local sections are highlighting local produce. And so it is an excellent time for farmers to be looking towards food hubs or other ways to access these markets. So yeah, perfect storm.
I know, and I feel like, part of it's funny, it's a perfect storm and there's a potential for greenwashing. I think we're starting to see some of that in our area in the Northeast. I don't know if you've seen that where you are, where, some restaurants, they definitely got on the bandwagon of really wanting to promote local, but they might order once or twice. And because it is a commitment, it does take that, extra effort. Your name might stay, farm name might stay on the menu for weeks at a time, and they haven't placed an order recently. And so some of our producers around have been starting to be like, okay, should we be developing policies with our wholesale buyers that they can't have our picture up on the grocery store shelf, or they can't have our name on the menu if they're not ordering this much per month or this much per week, so that we're not being used in this, billboard style. Yes, we're, so the buyer can show their customers that they're supporting local, but on the back end, they're really not doing what they need to be doing to say that effectively. And so, yeah, I think it's good. And then there's also some caution about how do you maintain that relationship over time so that it doesn't become greenwashed and
right. And of course, just a side corollary to that, what really is the definition of local? And we see this, is local a geographic designation, or is it based upon food sheds, or what really does local mean?
Yeah, I know here in the Northeast, I think a lot of our definitions of things are like 400 miles. And then when you look at Boston, when we do a radius of even 100 or 200 miles, half of that's the ocean. And so a lot of times we don't even think about, the seafood farmers and the fish farmers and the aquaculturists as part of our food shed. They often get left out of that conversation. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about connecting with buyers. Just to share some other examples, like thinking out of the box, there are food hubs emerging. So you might know of one in your area and reach out to them, and hopefully they have a website and a way to contact them that can get you started. For Springfield Community Gardens, where I am, we are operating as our own micro food hub as of late. We were able to get some cooling, and we have a refrigerated van, and thanks to some special funding from the USDA and some partnership agreements, like we've been able to help aggregate food from farmers and redistribute it to communities in need. It's been wonderful. It's very needed. But right now, a lot of that is dependent on these grants, but we're working on that sustainable in the future and really like keep buying. We're trying so hard to just keep buying from all these local farms who we work with and who are so valuable. So, Food Hub is one thing. Something creative that we have done is partnering with Cox Hospital in Springfield. And so we do have a hospital farm on some of Cox property, and we manage that farm, and a lot of the food grown from that is used to fill a weekly CSA for hospital employees. So that's a way of kind of introducing the idea of local food and showing people how we could get local food into a hospital to employees. That was a little bit creative. We also partner with Cox and some medical clinics where we can provide CSA boxes that are then prescribed to low-income patients. So it's a way of getting food right in the hands of people whose health problems could be prevented or reversed based off of diet changes. We also sell a little bit to a local grocer here, Mama Jean's, which is very nice. And we also help connect other farms to sell to that grocery store. And we have in our area, we have a lot of little general stores that will source a little bit. But between Kansas City and Spring Creek, Arkansas, I don't really know of other large functioning food hubs around there. Like we're in the middle and we're connecting a lot of people. So yeah, I just wanted to share some examples of different ways you could go about selling to some institutional buyers. And people always say, oh, why don't you sell to restaurants? Or why is it so hard to sell to the schools? And we could do a whole webinar on why school districts are so difficult. But I'd love to hear from you all, just advice for people looking to connect with buyers. And once you have connected with them, like, what do you do? And what are some maybe do's and don'ts of managing those relationships?
Jennifer, why don't you lead off?
Yeah, I think you gave some really great examples, Anna. And I would say also, I think it is based on a lot of relationships, for starters. I mean, it's obviously easy to talk to people that you already are in relationship or know. And that's, you could be finding people that could introduce you to your business from any part of your life and your social engagements. But if you don't have that network already or aren't sure where to start, I think it really is about, walking into the places where you think they might value local and regional food, and then have the conversation with the point person who makes the purchasing decisions. So finding your way to that buyer, I think, is like the first critical step. So if you're walking into the local store, local grocery store, or co-op, or a restaurant, can you talk to the chef owner and then get their buy-in for them wanting to do business with you as a local farm? And then if they're not the ultimate purchaser every week, who is the person that places the orders, and can they make sure that that person is on board with, the process, and the owner's on board with the, potentially higher pricing, if that's the case, or what are they paying? What are the varieties they can't get from their regular suppliers? Those kinds of things. And really just starting that conversation and building that relationship. And I would even say the same thing for schools. We have connected farmers one-on-one with different school districts in their communities, where it's, there's one, whether it's one, school food service director for the whole district, or the food service director for that particular school, even if it's in a district of 6 elementary schools, that one person in that cafeteria is willing to go the extra mile and purchase local because it fits with their menu and their planning and their pricing and their budget. It really just takes that one connection to start the relationship. And then I would say, fostering that relationship is so key. Having that first conversation with them about what is it that I can do for you? What kind of crops are you looking for? What varieties, what quantities, delivery schedules, all those logistical pieces. And then following up. I think, that constant communication and no surprises that Anthony said is really, really important. We had one school district that we'd worked with for years, and then the food service director retired and we got a new person in and they were overwhelmed with their new job. And it took us a year and a half of constant communication to get them back on board and buying from us, even though there were, everybody, all the other cafeteria employees, they were so excited about local. They'd bring the kids out to the farm, they do all this stuff. But the person that was in charge of the weekly ordering really struggled. And it was hard but like my food hub manager would call him on the phone every week, send him the email, send him a text. She did anything she could to communicate so that we were in front of him. And finally, when he got his systems in place, now the relationship has been smooth and solid, but it takes that kind of effort. And maybe that's silly. At some point, you got to cut your losses and say, oh, maybe it's not worth it. But it was worth it when they were buying actively from us, and it's worth it to bring them back. But it just really takes meeting people where they're at and that constant communication, and then follow through and making sure you're delivering that good, high quality product. But yeah, starting with who you know, and then, making cold calls, finding the person who's actually in charge of making those purchasing decisions week after week, and then figuring out what works for them in terms of communication, whatever that looks like. If it's calls, texts, Slack channel, emails. For us, it's been difficult because we have an online ordering platform as well. And it's like to onboard somebody to that, again, if it's different from what they're used to, they may not be willing to make that extra login and password and go onto the system and place the order by our timeline. So we end up doing a lot of customization. Like I said, if it means that we call them at the time that they want us to call them and we put in the order manually on their behalf, we'll do it because that's what it takes to make the sale.
So maybe a word of advice would be, don't just, make a flyer for your farm and walk into a restaurant and leave it with the hostess, or, walk into the school and try to leave it with the secretary. Like, make some calls, maybe do a little bit of research to understand who is the person making those decisions, and having that tenacity to be like, hey, no, ask the questions and not just take the first no.
And it's difficult with restaurants too, because a lot of times the chefs move around quite a bit, and sometimes they'll take their relationships with them and sometimes they won't, right? So it's like, I think that's where I would recommend making sure that you're really connected to the regular buyer, but also building a secondary relationship with potentially the owner of the restaurant, if it's not the same person as their hired chef who's making those, culinary decisions. Because when that chef moves to a different restaurant and you still want to keep that account, maybe you'll follow that chef and you'll get a new account, but you want to continue to maintain those relationships that you've built and keep your name out there. And so that's where getting at those multiple decision makers sometimes is really helpful, because if they see something different, they're going to start asking questions, and they can put pressure on their chef maybe not to order as much or not to spend as much, or you need to watch your costs. And so if there's buy-in across all of it, then those issues kind of become easier to negotiate.
So I wanted to share an interesting experience that I had recently. And, we tend to focus on farmers making the contact, but obviously the street goes both directions, and there are chefs that are interested in meeting the farmers. And quite frankly, chefs and owners don't have a lot of time in their day. And if, 15 farmers want to sell to a restaurant, it can be a challenge to just find the time to make the appointments, et cetera, et cetera. But this was an interesting event. It was organized by chefs and restaurant owners. Springfield is blessed with a number of restaurants that are interested in sourcing locally. And what they did is they put together a program that they called speed dating. And basically, we had a nice venue, and we had fabulous hors d'oeuvres and wine and all of that. So it was a great event. But basically, it was a chance for chefs to meet farmers. Each chef had a station. They had provided beforehand a list of produce they would be interested in purchasing. sourcing, and then farmers could join the group. Initially, it was by invitation, but it wasn't long before farmers began bringing their friends to speed dating. And the way it worked is every 15 minutes, a farmer would move to a new chef, a new restaurant owner. And, this went on for several hours, and it gave farmers a chance to meet a lot of chefs, but also gave chefs a chance to meet a lot of farmers. And again, in a just a very relaxed social setting, relationships, as you said, Jennifer, were built and developed. I had farmers say, well, this is much better than cold calling. And so, there are ways to turn that initial contact into a valuable experience. But again, I just wanted to share that kind of creative effort on the part of chefs to kind of add to your comments, Jennifer. I think it is important, obviously, to maintain relationships, but you have to develop that relationship initially.
I love that. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, just to build on that too, we're really fortunate in Massachusetts. We have the Massachusetts Farm to School Network, and they do similar things with school food service directors as well, where they host regional site visits to different farms. And they've also done some webinars where they bring together groups of food service buyers to meet with farmers, kind of a food service buyer-farmer relationship, so that, yeah, you can put a face with a name. Sometimes it's even hard to find out, like, who is the school food service director and how do I get their attention if you're a farmer. And so having those intermediary organizations organize events like that, I think, is really super helpful.
Definitely. I wish that Anthony and Thomas were still on, because I did want to ask, when it comes to schools, I understand that the people preparing the food don't have a lot of time. They have to do things in such large quantities. So it's helpful being able to have, like, oh, here's a whole bag of frozen vegetables that are already chopped and uniform and ready to be thrown in the oven or a pot or whatever it is. So I don't know if you all have any advice for farmers who are trying to get connected with school districts, or, maybe the solution just is that the food hubs aggregate and provide food to the school districts. I know that's just not always feasible, because there may not be a food hub near you.
We
or
had a
I don't
we had
know.
we had a survey recently in Missouri, asking school food service personnel, what would they be interested in purchasing? And there are three items that rose to the top. One was watermelons, one was apples, and the other was tomatoes. Those are all products that a farmer can provide intact, and then they can be easily prepared in the food service section of the school. But when you move beyond those, when you moved into like lettuces or other vegetables that, quite frankly, the food services want in a ready to heat or ready to serve form, that becomes more of a challenge. And from the standpoint of providing product that has been processed to some degree, then there's all kinds of regulatory issues that arise at that point. So you're exactly right. It is a challenge to, first of all, identify what products the schools are interested in, and then how to capitalize on those. Not every farmer wants to grow apples, watermelons, or tomatoes, but those were the three that rose to the top.
Yeah, that's almost how we get an in with our school districts, is because they all want apples year round, because that's something that's easy and they can just put out, and students will take them, things like that. And yeah, it is challenging. People want already peeled and chopped onions, they want peeled and diced butternut squash, they want peeled carrots, chopped frozen this or that. And so we've really worked hard to try to, we did a value-added pilot project where we did try to aggregate enough product wholesale to get multiple pallets of green peppers and carrots and green beans. We did a couple summers ago, and we took them out to the Western Mass Food Processing Center and have them frozen and chopped in bags. And it was really hard. The price point was very, very difficult to give the farmers what they need and then pay a secondary person to chop it and then sell it to a school district who doesn't have a large budget to pay more for those products when they're getting it from super large aggregators and other distributors that can do it much more less expensively than we could. So yeah, we ended up just trying to hone in on the crops that made a lot of sense for that further processing piece. But it's a difficult ask. And if you don't have one of those aggregator processors near you as a farmer to work with, it can be even harder to think about. But I know in Massachusetts, it's kind of one of those funny things. Apparently you can peel and chop butternut squash in your or not chop, but you can peel it and sell it whole in your post-harvest wash station, which I still don't understand how that's not processing, but there are many large-scale wholesalers that do have these kind of old-fashioned lathe-like butternut squash peelers. And so if you can offer something a little bit slightly processed, we have some chefs now that are asking our farmers, can you just strip the stems off the kale because it'll save me time in the kitchen? And so we're thinking about, we're really working closely with our food safety folks at our Department of Ag to be like, where's that line between what can you pre-process on the farm as part of your post-harvest handling facilities, and when do you need to actually be a food processing manufacturer, and follow a whole different set of food safety regulations. So those are things just to keep in mind. I think if you're working with those schools and they want to save that labor, what are the things you can do to make it easier for them to handle the product that you're trying to sell at a larger scale?
That's great advice. And it's kind of a good segue into something we wanted to touch on a little bit more, with just scaling up and logistics and having to think about, do you buy a giant salad spinner or take the time to destem the kale? Patrick, did you want to speak maybe a little bit more about those scaling up logistics, the crop planning, the refrigeration, the transportation, special equipment? These are often the crux of scaling, aren't they?
I would like to share a few nuggets that farmers have shared with me over the years. And Anna, I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and do just a very quick presentation on this. Let's see. All right. Hold on a moment. Can we actually see the presentation now?
Yes, I can see a place for notes. Oh, now it looks like it's full screen.
Does it look good? Okay.
There
All
we go.
right. So let me hide these floating meeting controls. Hold on just a second. Okay, there we go. All right. And again, these are nuggets that have been shared with me over the years by farmers who have successfully moved from local direct market sales into more of a wholesale arena. The first thing, and we touched on some of these points last night, and I just wanted to kind of reinforce them as well. But first of all, crop selection. Again, it is important to focus on a few crops. And, as was mentioned earlier, if you're targeting school food services, well, tomatoes, apples, and watermelons. But focus on a few crops. These are crops that, definitely would be needed by wholesale markets. It's always good to have a plan B. So, the crops you're selecting, you want to have another market outlet if possible. Obviously, crops that you can grow well and that you can sell a significant volume. And then that final bullet, these need to be crops that you can grow on your farm with your production practices that are profitable at wholesale prices. So you have to have a clear understanding of what your cost of production is. But again, diversity can be helpful with smaller scale direct market sales, but oftentimes it's not profitable from the standpoint of wholesale markets. We touched on this also. It's very important to select the right varieties for wholesale channels. And sometimes farmers market varieties, again, they may be fabulous in every way, but they may have some issue when it comes to crops that require durability from the standpoint of harvest, handling, packing, and storage in a wholesale channel. So be sure to make a good decision when it comes to variety choice. And then when you think about the mix of crops on your farm, it's very important to look at the realities of each individual crop and then how they intersect. If you're going to scale up and you're scaling up crops that have high demands from the standpoint of labor at the same time, that can be a real challenge. On the other end, if you've developed a crop mix that allows you to spread out the busy times, that can be very helpful. And again, a clear understanding of what the labor demand is for each crop, that's important too. And And again, the final bullet, can you mechanize? And looking at this picture, this is a garlic farmer who is on his way to mechanization. He's developed a tool that punches the holes in the plastic on the raised beds, and now he doesn't have to create these holes by hand as he's planting garlic cloves. The next step, of course, would be a transplanter, and then eventually an undercutter to raise the bed at harvest time and make harvest more efficient. Labor. This is an important thing to remember. You, the farmer, you're the most efficient and effective laborer, but now you're being pulled in different directions from the standpoint of managing a larger scale operation. And the reality is you're going to become more of a manager than a laborer. Your time is too valuable as the arc of the farm moves towards wholesale to have you out in the field and doing jobs like pulling weeds and planting garlic cloves. And again, it's important when we think about labor to plan for peak labor and make sure that you have the availability of labor and make sure that the cost of that labor works with the profitability of each of the crops in your crop mix. Remember, labor is the largest cost in vegetable production. And as you consider hiring labor, make sure that each crop that you've selected is still going to be profitable. And then efficiency is so critically important. And in fact, it can be to your advantage to look at tasks or crop-specific teams. In other words, group of people who are specifically trained in producing particular crops. I remember visiting a diversified fruit operation, very large scale, but they had crop-specific teams. One crop team was the blackberry team, one crop team was the strawberry team, and that team focused on those particular crops. Remember that yeah, it's expensive to take time to train people or perhaps even to provide professional development opportunities, but it pays off in higher efficiency. Really important thing to mention. And then when you're thinking about mechanization, weigh that against the cost of labor. And I think, let's see, yeah, this next slide, hopefully the video will work, is a mechanical blueberry harvester. And blueberry farmers, once they reach the scale of about 20 acres or so, the cost of a mechanical harvester, which is considerable, is more. It offsets the cost of what it would be to hand harvest that crop. So let's see if this is actually going to work. I like that video because that's a very innovative harvester design that actually uses blasts of air to knock the fruit off the bushes, and it can pick fresh market quality blueberries. Now, from the standpoint of management, really important to focus on managing the business as well as managing the crops. And as I said before, as the owner of the farm, this is going to become an area that you have to put time into. And obviously, a person needs experience in business management, economic analysis, and personnel management. And if you don't have these skills, then they can be developed, certainly, but it does require some time and effort to develop these skills for a person who hasn't worked in the business environment. Some other thoughts, you have to become a good planner. And this was mentioned by both of our Food Hub speakers earlier, the importance of planning. Certainly crop planning, but also market planning and planning for the future. And you're going to need operations plans for tasks, labor, expenses, cash flow, and quite frankly, lots more. The other thing that you have to become good at is a trainer, because you're going to have to train people to lead teams. I work in the produce food safety arena, and obviously the food safety person at a farm, that's an important role, but one part of that person's job is to make sure that everyone on the farm operates in an atmosphere of produce food safety. And so you have to become an effective trainer. And again, some more thoughts on management. If you don't like these sorts of things, perhaps there's a team member that does, but it's important that there's someone who can focus on personnel management, record keeping and bookkeeping, running numbers, economic analysis, selling and managing sales, and also regulatory issues. And again, all of a sudden, we're going to become specialists. Now, many farmers are, when it comes to the business aspect, are generalists, but when you move up into the wholesale arena, it's very important that the individual aspects of the business are focused on. And so people become specialists. And there certainly is a strong argument for hiring support people if necessary. Certainly accountants and tax specialists, but also people who can help with labor, people can help with produce, food safety, and legal counsel. These are all important people to have on your team. Some thoughts on rules and regulations. Now, as you become a larger scale producer, you become more visible. And this is, it's just the reality. And quite frankly, at wholesale scale, there is really no tolerance for not knowing the rules and regulations. You may be subject to rules and regulations. We talked about this yesterday with the various the way farms are classified relative to the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule, but there's other rules and regulations to be considered as well. Certainly labor and OSHA rules, third-party audits, tax regulations. If you sell across state lines, then things become a bit more complicated because different states have different regulations. And so if you do cross state lines, if you're involved in interstate commerce, then you have to be on top of that as well. Risk management becomes critically important. Now, obviously, risk management is important for all farms, but particularly as farms scale up and move into the wholesale arena, when you see an increase in size and gross sales, there's obviously higher risk and there's more to lose. Very important to have backup plans in place. What do you do if the cooler goes out? Do you have access to supplemental cold storage? What happens if a pump breaks down? Do you have a repair person on speed dial so that they can get there and fix the pump before crops suffer from drought? What happens if a delivery truck breaks down? What happens if workers don't show up? And obviously this was really came to the forefront during the issues related to the pandemic. And what about if you are injured or ill? Is there someone who can fill your role temporarily or perhaps even long term? Some other things to consider from the standpoint of risk management: a line of credit is very helpful. And if you have to replace cold storage or a vehicle or something, having a line of credit can make all of the difference. Critically important to separate assets, business assets and personal assets completely. Again, talk with a tax specialist when you set up your business structure. Your goal, of course, is to protect your assets. And then you have to have adequate insurance for the business. Now, in my experience, all farms, regardless of scale, regardless of marketing plans, need adequate insurance. But as you move into the wholesale arena, liability protection and product liability become very important. And there may be other specialized insurances for vehicles, for cold storage, for other aspects of a farm. Financing. So farms need financing for capital purchases when scaling up. And obviously you want a relationship with a bank or a lender. You may also need operating loans to meet payrolls. Have to have a business plan, have to have good records if you're going to develop that relationship with a bank or a lender. So be focused on record keeping and be focused on developing a solid business plan. Marketing and sales, we talked about this already, so we don't need to go into a lot of detail here, but it's very important to know where you're going to sell your crop, understanding the volume that a market can handle, and have a backup plan. It was very interesting to hear our two Food Hub speakers talk about, well, the Food Hub is one option, but many of their farmers have independent wholesale arrangements or perhaps do some direct market sales as well. So have backup plans in place. That's an important part of risk management. Consider a sales and marketing specialist. Now, obviously with a Food Hub, the Food Hub manager becomes part of your team, and they can help you with wholesale sales. Obviously you want to think long-term. The arc of the business can and often does change over time. And then think about building your brand and considering this not just today or next year, but consider the long term and how you can continue to build your business over time. Some quick thoughts on packing and handling, and Anna mentioned this, but moving from direct market to wholesale is going to change the way you do things. First of all, mechanization becomes important. Replacing hand sorting with automated grading lines You are going to need a packing house. You're going to need facilities to store product. Cold storage comes to mind here. Looking at this picture here of these tomatoes, each tomato has an individual sticker with a lot number on it. And again, this is part of traceability. Moving away from handling product in a bulk sense to actually identifying specific pieces of produce is one of the things that may happen as you move into the wholesale arena. And then you're going to need transportation for volume. And Anna mentioned our refrigerated van that we use for the food hub here at Springfield Community Gardens. But again, being able to efficiently transport quantity of product in conditions that maintain quality is really important. Remember, there's going to be standard pack requirements and grading and sizing requirements as well. There may be the expectation that you package in pallets, that you use shrink wrap, that you use specific size containers or cartons that contain multiple containers. There may be biosecurity regulations from a wholesale market. And again, regulations. Be sure that you're aware of what they are and be sure that you do everything you can to comply with them. And again, if you cross state lines, things get a little bit more complicated. Think about your transportation setup. Map your farm for vehicle movement. Make sure that your farm roads can accommodate larger vehicles. If you have roads that are impassable when they're wet, this can be a problem from the standpoint of meeting delivery schedules for wholesale markets. And again, remember the cost of transportation. Know what remember that your pricing has to cover all costs, not just the cost of production of the crop, but also the costs that are involved with harvest, handling, storage, and transportation. So again, things like mileage, depreciation on vehicles, the cost of the driver, and then shrinkage. And again, benchmarks for the amount of produce you need to pack and haul. You have to figure out what these are to be cost effective. And then again, the transition over time. Sometimes the advice is, well, start small and slowly go into this. But the reality is that if this is your future, you don't want to get caught in the middle. You have too much capital invested and not enough revenue to pay for everything. So develop your solid plan, develop your timeline, and then go for it. I do want to mention some resources available from the National Center for Agricultural Technology. Part of that group is ATRA, and just a really nice suite of references and resources for farmers who are considering scaling up and moving from direct market sales into wholesale channels. Okay. So
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, just again, nuggets that people have shared with me over the years.
And actually, we did have a question come in from the audience. Has anyone found institutions looking for dehydrated food? Since at least in Missouri, that falls into cottage laws. But are people doing that? Is there much of a demand, do you think, for dehydrated food?
I've definitely not seen that in our area, and I don't know that it would be considered cottage law where we are unless you're dehydrating the whole thing. And then I think this is where it gets to be a fine line between, are you cutting and chopping something to dehydrate it into smaller pieces? Are you just drying herbs? Then what do you do with those herbs? Because the minute you take a dried herb and crush them, that's a processing activity. So I think it gets a little bit tricky. What is the end product that someone wants?
I think a comment should be made here that cottage laws are fine from the standpoint of local direct market sales, but once you move into wholesale sales, I think that the standard from the standpoint of handling and processing and anything related to the crop is going to be at a level that cottage laws may not satisfy what buyers are interested in. So, if you are considering selling product under the cottage laws, make sure that you check with your potential buyers to see if that's okay.
All right. Thank you for that.
I had a couple of comments, a couple of things, and thank you, Patrick. I feel like that was a really comprehensive overview. One thing that I've seen when you mentioned about insurance, and I didn't see it on your slides, but just wanted to mention it because it's happened to at least 4 farms in our area in the last 5 years. we've had a lot of farms that have had fires, catastrophic fires. And those farms that had business interruption insurance were far better off than those who did not, in order to like get in temporary buildings or have some resources to hire staff. So just thinking about when you talk to your insurance company as you scale up, you know, one of the fires was in someone's farm stand store. So they were able to quickly get in, you know, different trailers and recreate their farm store and keep their staff going while they rebuilt the store. Someone else had the same thing happen in their barn that they used for their CSA pickup location, their coolers. It was attached to a greenhouse. All of it came down. And so, you know, they did not have business interruption insurance, and then really had to, you know, do multiple crowdfunding and ask their customers for investment and things like that. And, you know, a couple other livestock farms and meat processing plants. I mean, I feel like we've had so many catastrophic fires of larger scale businesses in our area that I think just making sure you're really covered for all aspects of your business. We've seen lots of flooding as well. You know, there's different kinds of, you know, obviously climate change. So thinking about business insurance in that slide, it crosses lots of levels. And I would say too, in our area, a lot of our buyers kind of dictate the level of insurance that we need, which may be more than you would normally purchase for yourself. So again, the buyers might help inform what kind of coverage levels and those conversations with your insurance company. And then the other thing, when you mentioned really factoring in the cost of transportation, one of the things we've been trying to solve with other partners and in collaboration with other farmers is how do we avoid backhauling empty vehicles? Depending on how far you're driving to deliver, you know, you may be going with 7 pallets or 8 pallets that fit in your box truck and delivering at a wholesale level. But if you're always driving back empty, that's a cost that you're incurring, that maybe you could think about collaboration with other growers and like how do you economize the delivery routes that you're doing as well. So I don't know, just wanted to add those things while I was thinking about it.
Definitely. Very good notes. I also know of some farms that have experienced fires, and I don't think had business interruption insurance, because I know they were left in really bad positions, and you hate to see that. So very good notes. And we would be remiss not to talk, we've talked about communication and it's important so much, but we would be remiss not to maybe spend a little bit of time in this last portion of the program to just talk about those systems and expectations. And I'm sure, Jennifer, you have experienced lots of lessons learned doing what you do. So if you could maybe start us off talking about the methods of communication and what kind of systems should be set up.
Yeah, I would say, you know, building off of what we heard from Anthony and Thomas too, I mean, we do a lot of communication pre-season with both our buyers and our farmers. And I think that's really key, whether it's you individually as a farmer with the buyers you're going to be working with, or if you're working with a food hub or any other intermediary organization. You know, we kind of, when I think about our cycle of planning, we in our systems that we put in place around that, we really start with, you know, that communication about quantities, varieties, pricing, delivery schedules, all of those logistics, and really doing that upfront planning before the season even starts, so that we have a sense of, you know, especially if we're going to ask farmers to scale up and, you know, grow more than they are growing, they may not have multiple markets to offload that product. So we have to be really cautious to make sure that the buyers are serious about taking what they say they're going to take and that they're going to pay for the pricing that they want. Again, that's where maybe contracts are really helpful, or MOUs or agreements upfront ahead of time. So putting those systems in place, having templates potentially to develop those agreements in writing so you don't forget things with each conversation that you have with different buyers. You know, sometimes when you're getting started, it's easy just to go on trust, but I think putting anything you can in writing, following up with a conversation in writing with the potential buyers that maybe you're building a new relationship with, like, this is what I understood you said, these are the varieties and the quantities and the delivery schedules, this is when we're going to start working with you, these are the payment terms, this is how the ordering system is going to work, how we're going to communicate if something isn't going according to plan. Like having all those details spelled out up front, that way that you know your investments in equipment or labor, all the other things that are going to need to happen before you do the first delivery to those clients are in place, is very, very helpful. And then I think really putting the systems in place to have those, you know, regular touch points around crop availability, ordering, what's happening on the farm, reaching out, figuring out if the needs of your buyers are changing. What are they seeing in the marketplace? How can they help you be one of their best customers in a way too? Like, if they're seeing that you're not doing something because you're learning, can they give you that feedback? Are they willing to take the time to do that? Can they spend some time with you so you can see how they handle your product? How does it come into the warehouse? How do they want it delivered? What does your driver need to know to be able to deliver according to how they like to receive product, and when and where and how, and how does it need to roll off the truck into their space? Those kinds of things. I think all those little details are really important and sometimes can be overlooked, but can really make it or break it. If you're the kind of customer that follows all the norms that they're expecting, when your truck rolls up, that goes a long way to keeping those relationships over time. So really kind of thinking through all the aspects of how to work with the different clients, and they may all have different requirements, which I think can be tricky to track all of that, note all of that, and keep those lines of communication open. Mm-hmm. And then, having those payment systems in place, again, I think is really important to track, invoices, bills of lading, like delivery slips. We always print out 2 copies. We have someone sign a copy when it's delivered. It goes back in the record so that we have, documentation that the product was received. Sometimes people look at it, sometimes they don't. We want to know right away if there's a problem with the quality or expectations or something like that, so that, we're pretty confident that, they received it in good condition and it's great. And if they ended up leaving it on the loading dock overnight, their employee left it somewhere, like that's not our fault. Like that never happens, but it could happen. So you don't know. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of things I think to just follow up with, and then to make sure that you're being paid. I think sometimes in the busyness, as Patrick mentioned, having those record keeping systems and, things in place are really important, especially if your payment terms are not at delivery. How are you keeping track of these large orders and these payments over time, so that, your accounts are current, so that you can meet your cash flow needs, and keep your business on solid footing. So we do that a lot through I know Thomas mentioned they use Local Food Marketplace. That's a platform that we use. There are so many online e-commerce platforms built for farmers to deal with online ordering, online sales, invoicing, inventory systems, things like that. So I think doing your research and figuring out which system you feel most comfortable with, that can be the best platform that you can continue to customize as your business grows and onboard your customers to, is super important. And then learning it and keeping it up to date, and having some easy pathways to onboard new vendors and customers to your business, and have it connect to your record keeping systems and financial management systems, so that it creates less work for you overall. The nice thing about, not to be an advertisement for Local Food Marketplace or any of these programs, but if it's the same platform that you can do your customer ordering through, create pick lists and packing lists for your field crew and your, harvest, wash pack crew, and all your post-harvest work, get it on the truck, and then it can create those invoices for you. And then if you can connect all of that to your financial management systems, like that's just so much less, tracking that you have to think about, if those, you can set up those systems when you have time, and then keep them up to date as you move forward throughout the season.
Yeah, it sounds like that might be a word of advice for producers, that you might have to be open to adopting some of those systems used by the food hubs, or whoever you're trying to sell to, and it's not going to just be as easy as dropping off your bins of produce and saying bye. You might have to be a little bit flexible and willing to adapt and adopt those systems as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think part of it as well is, just being really well organized. I think sometimes your customers, like busy restaurant chefs, again, the paper gets stuck in a pile somewhere, and all of a sudden, 6 months has gone by and they haven't paid. They paid 4 of your 10 invoices, but the other 6 are missing in action. So it's like, if you're not tracking that, then it's hard to follow up with them, and just keeping all that coming in and out a little bit, and chasing people down is not the reason we got into farming, but it's just part of the operation. So
well, and again, a food hub can serve a very useful intermediary from the standpoint of what you're describing, Jennifer, and especially farmers who are sort of dipping their toes into servicing a market such as a restaurant or a grocery store. Working with a food hub can be very helpful because there are people in place to take care of some of these jobs.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Well, and on that note, I definitely want to give a shout out to some great progress being made in the food system space that is hopefully making it easier and providing more support to producers and food hubs and everyone in between. The USDA has supported the creation of these regional food business centers. And I will actually share, why don't I share my screen to show what I'm talking about? Because it gives a nice map. So Patrick and I at least are calling from Missouri, so we're in the Heartland region. We've got Jennifer over there. I guess you would be, where are you?
Up in the northeast in the green, upper right-hand corner.
Northeast in the green. Okay, perfect. But everywhere across the US are these regional food business centers, and it brings together people, entities, universities, nonprofits, businesses working to bring more local food to everybody. And we're coordinating. Like Springfield Community Gardens is part of the Heartland Regional Food Business Center, and we are able to, coordinate with different technical service providers so that we are enhancing the help that we can provide to farmers, whether you are raising livestock or looking at specialty crops, or maybe you just want to focus on berries, whatever. We are all putting our heads together and trying to better direct the support that all these producers need. And if you are listening to this and you are wondering, like, where do I get started? What do? I don't know if there's a food hub in my area. I mean, doing a little bit of your own online searching to see if there is, that would be a good starting point. But you can also reach out to one of these food business centers near you and, see what they have to say and explain your situation and say, you know what, I have the production ready. I need access to markets. They can help you with that. Or maybe your production, like you need more assistance scaling and getting advice or developing a business plan, or even just talking through whether this is the right option for you. I would recommend reaching out to your food business center because they are getting everyone together who has the answers, and we're doing a better job of sharing resources and just coordinating all of this so that we can make some big progress with rebuilding the local food systems and just making sure that we're supporting our farmers in the best way possible, because there are still hundreds of thousands of small to mid-sized farms across the US, and we're biased on this call, but we want to give them business and we want to support them. And it's so important for our local economies and our agricultural heritage to do so. So if you don't know where to start, I would recommend checking out which center is near you. Or if you are in the Springfield or area or in the Ozarks, Springfield Community Gardens is definitely your friend. And if you come to us with a question we don't know, we'll figure it out together, and we can help bring you into a network of farmers where we're all learning from one another and trying to really work toward the same goal. So that, and of course, the extension offices that offer so many free trainings and events, and they offer farm visits, a lot of one-on-one consultations to help the growers in their communities. So that's another really good resource that I would leave people with. I don't know if either of you would want to add anything. Parting thoughts, parting words, parting resources for folks listening.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I really appreciate that you brought up the regional food business centers and extension. I would also say if you aren't already connected to your local USDA service center, so that's where you can go to meet up with the Farm Service Agency, with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, with the Rural Development Agency. They have a lot of resources and certainly are well connected to the local farming community as well, and can, you know, hopefully tie you into a lot of other grant, cost share, conservation, loan programs. I was just thinking back on the question about dehydration, but like, you know, if you're interested in doing value added production, like the rural development programs have a value added producer grant program. So they can also connect you with resources that might help you think about developing a business like that. And your State Department of Agriculture, at least in our neck of the woods, has a lot of great resources. They're both a regulatory agency, but also they do a lot of producer education. So they sponsor a lot of programming across the state in collaboration with Extension and others to really help make sure producers know how to get access to their grant programs, their support programs in the area across a range of topics, from equipment and food safety and composting and, you know, all climate change, you know, efforts and things like that. So at least in our neck of the woods, our State Department of Agriculture has a lot of great resources and programs for producers. So, and yes, they all should be connected with the regional food business centers as those are getting up and running.
And the only thing I would add is develop your peer networks, your relationships with other farmers. And a good place to start is the National Farmers Union. And then within most states, there is a state farmers union that these are people who are fellow farmers. They have been through many of the journeys that new farmers might be considering. And to a person, it's been my experience, they really relish and enjoy the peer relationship. They're happy to act as mentors. And again, there's just a lot of expertise out there in the farming community.
Definitely. The peer network is important. Well, thank you, everyone. This webinar will be added to YouTube within the week, and we so appreciate your interest in learning about these topics, and we'll make it real easy for you to reach out if you have any additional questions. So thank you again for being here, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.